At the kitchen table, Jack leisurely finished his cup of coffee before his long-awaited fishing trip. The clock on the wall read 7:30 in the morning, and he knew his friends were waiting for him at the gas station. But there was a calmness in his soul and a smile of anticipation on his face. Fishing on Riverford Lake promised to be a little vacation from the routine and office hustle and bustle. Lauren, meanwhile, was getting the kids up, 2 boys, ages 6 and 8. They, yawning and rubbing their eyes, were happily listening to stories about their upcoming fun at their grandmother's house in the neighboring town. Lauren assured them that Grandma had a big yard and would probably make their favorite apple pie. The kids themselves were thrilled. The opportunity to spend a weekend visiting their favorite grandma always seemed like an exciting adventure. "Do not forget to bring your fishing rods from the garage," Lauren reminded him, as if concerned that her husband would not miss a thing. Jack grinned and replied, "Of course, dear. I packed everything up last night." He finished his coffee and stood up from the table, stretching his body. Fridays were usually his hardest days at work, but now, looking forward to nature, fresh air, and fishing parties with friends, he felt full of energy. He glanced at his wife. She looked calm, in good spirits, already dressed in comfortable pants and a light blouse. Nearby, on the floor, was a small suitcase with the children's things. Lauren had promised to take the children to her mother. This did not seem unusual. It was not the first time her mother had taken her grandchildren on Saturday and Sunday. Jack's relationship with his mother-in-law was even, and he had no reason to suspect that anything could go wrong. "Jack, when you plan to be back?" Lauren asked, fixing her hair. "Sunday night, about 7 or 8, he answered, noticing his oldest son dragging his backpack toward the door. "When will you be back from Mom's?" Also on Sunday, Monday morning at the latest, Lauren continued to say in a casual, even tone, "We'll see if we can stick around if Mom's okay." Jack opened the trunk of his SUV and carefully stowed his big rubber boots, his tackle bag, and a warm blanket. Next to it, he put a small box of food that Lauren had carefully prepared for him. "Be careful driving," she said, looking at him worriedly. "Do not worry," he replied with a smile. "You do too, and call me if anything happens." He walked around the car to say goodbye to the kids. The boys were already buckled in the back seat of her car, chatting about how they were going to help Grandma water the vegetable garden. Then Jack kissed Lauren on the lips, softly, lingering a little longer, feeling her warm breath. It all seemed very natural and family warm. With a final wave of his hand, he got behind the wheel. He started the engine and, taking a deep breath, waved through the down window. Lauren smiled, made an answering gesture with her hand. The kids, noses pressed against the glass, shouted loudly, "Daddy, bye." Jack waved at them, not doubting for a second that everything was going according to plan. He was convinced. As soon as he left, Lauren would load everything up for good and head off to see her mom, too. But the minute Jack's SUV rounded the corner and the sound of the engine died down, Lauren's expression changed. The calm smile was gone. She pulled out her cell phone, dialed a short number. "Yes, I'm taking the kids to my mom's right now, and then I'll be back." "You can drive up to my place a little later," she said quietly, looking around as if she was afraid someone might overhear her. As she got behind the wheel, Lauren told the kids that they'd have to stop at Grandma's for a while, and then Mom had forgotten something at home and would come back for it. The kids, of course, did not pay much attention to this detail. Grandma's baked goods are much more interesting than a travel schedule. They were only excited about the possible adventure. Lauren drove the boys to a neighboring town and left them in the care of their grandmother, exchanging a few sentences about Jack's away too, and Lauren, might be back later. Lauren's mother did not suspect a thing, just smiled and was happy to host her grandchildren for the entire weekend. After making sure the kids were in good hands, Lauren got back in the car and drove home. Her mind raced with thoughts full of excitement. The empty house, the absence of her husband. The realization that she had so skillfully pulled off this lie gave her a mixed feeling of fear and excitement. Her knees trembled a little and her heart beat an anxious beat, but, suppressing her anxiety, she drove on, for the plan was already in motion. Just then it was them, the family, the traditional morning goodbye, smiles, kisses, children's joy. And now Lauren was already making a turn back to the house, which would now become the stage for completely different events. Jack sincerely thought that everything was going according to the usual scenario. The children, to their grandmother, his wife, there he to go fishing. But it was all just to cover a masterly performance. Lauren realized that it only took one little thing, one random phone call, for the whole structure to collapse. But now that her husband was far away, she bravely took another deep breath. Adrenaline and anticipation came over her in a wave. She pulled into a familiar, quiet neighborhood. Her gaze slid over the neighbors' windows. No lights were on anywhere, all at work or on errands. The house greeted her with a smooth facade, as reliable and cozy as ever. Lauren parked and got out of the car, feeling her legs weaken. Maybe this was the wrong decision, but remembering the voice on the phone, she finally convinced herself otherwise. It's going to be okay. Jack would not come back early. He would not suspect a thing. She put the key in the lock, stepped into the house, and looked around, closing the door behind her. Ahead of her was the very weekend she decided to spend in secret from her husband. And it was that duplicitous morning that had been the impetus for all the drama that was just beginning. Hours later, in a different place, in a completely different mood, Jack was sitting around a campfire with his friends Tom and Brandon. They were camped on the picturesque shore of Riverford Lake. The trees rustled and the water rippled quietly near the shore in the light gusts of wind. The fishing had already brought them a few good trophies. The fire-roasted fish smelled deliciously of spices, and the men were engaged in friendly conversations about life, sports, and work. Jack had always appreciated these outings, a chance to get away from the noise of the city, to shake off the excitement of the office routine, to remember what true male friendship was all about. The fire crackled, sparks flew up into the sky, which was almost devoid of city lights. The men joked with each other, reminiscing about their college days. "Are you sure, Lauren, it's okay with you going away for so long?" Tom asked, taking a sip of beer. "No," Jack answered, smiling. "She's gone with the kids to her mom's for the weekend. So everything's cool." "Dude, you lucky," Brandon said, waving a charred stick over the fire. "My Emily would been all over me if I left her alone." "Every family is different," Jack said. "Lauren and I are fine. She trusts me, and I trust her." He really did. In their years of marriage, they never had any major conflicts. There had been minor disagreements, of course, but he could not imagine it like some people he knew had, with scandals and symbols. Lauren had always seemed like a reliable and loving wife. That was why now he sat by the fire with complete calm. The sun had already set, and the sky had turned soft purple and pink. The conversation turned to old stories from his youth, to ridiculous mishaps that had happened on past fishing trips. Jack shared memories of his and Lauren's first outing together, when they just gotten married. His friends listened, smiling. It was obvious he had a strong feeling for his wife, and they believed Jack had a good family. At that moment, his cell phone, which was lying near his backpack, vibrated briefly. A notification, the same one he was usually pretty calm about. Maybe some kind of newsletter or bill reminder. But when the vibration repeated and the Ring app icon appeared on the screen, Jack reached for it, determined to see what the signal was. Ring usually sent notifications if someone moved on the porch or knocked on the door. Not much. Maybe the delivery guy brought a package, he thought. He clicked on the icon, and the first thing he saw was a picture from his hallway. There was a door in the frame, and at that very moment someone was swinging it open from the inside. A man in his 30s with a short haircut and an athletic build walked confidently into the house. He had a backpack behind his back, a supermarket bag, and a bottle of wine in his hands. His face was in shadow, but it was possible to make out his general features. Jack frowned. "Who the hell is this?" "We do not have any relatives in town, or friends who might show up unannounced." Lauren appeared in the frame after the guest. Jack suddenly felt a hot wave of strange feeling. Lauren? She should be at her mom's, right? But the video said otherwise. She was home, not just standing on the doorstep, but looking like she'd been waiting for this man. She had a smile on her face. She did not hesitate to lean toward him and kiss him on the corner of his mouth. They both seemed to feel completely relaxed and confident. Jack's heart began to pound so hard that the noise of the fire and the chatter of his friends faded. He felt the ground beneath his feet shake. He saw Lauren take the bag from the man, and then, as if fleetingly, she pressed herself against him, and he put his hand on her waist. Together they disappeared from the camera's view, heading toward the back of the house, toward where their bedroom was. Jack swiped his hand across the screen to switch to the other camera. But the next few seconds were only sound. Ring picked up muffled voices, light female laughter, and then the connection cut off. Perhaps they closed the bedroom door, or the camera simply was not set to broadcast sound continuously. Jack could not take his eyes off the screen while the cheerful voices of his friends continued. His head felt empty and his chest felt tight. His first thought was, maybe it's a mistake, maybe I've misunderstood. But no. The picture was clear. Lauren was home, even though she claimed she'd gone to her mama's. And this man, who was he anyway? Why was he so at ease in Jack's house? He put the phone away abruptly, trying to save face in front of his friends. But too much internal explosion had already begun. His hands trembled visibly, and his lips pressed into a thin line. Tom, noticing this change, asked, Jack, what's the matter with you? You've gone pale. Jack let out a labored exhalation. Guys, I've got an emergency there. I'm sorry, I have to go home, and immediately stood up, shaking off the sticky needles from his pants. He did not want to make a scene, did not want to attract any more questions, because he felt that if he started to answer now, a rage would burst out of him that would be unstoppable. The sight of betrayal was fresh and obvious. It was one thing to have speculation or rumors, another to have ironclad proof in the form of a videotape. Gotta go right now while they there. He repeated inwardly, swallowing bitterness. Jack hurriedly grabbed his fishing rods and tackle, throwing them into the trunk. Neither Tom nor Brandon had time to ask him a proper question, and the look on Jack's face made it clear that now was not the time. He started the car, turned around in a cloud of dust, and drove out onto the road, leading into town with little regard for speed. His breathing was ragged and his head was a roaring hurricane. How could she? Pounded in his temples. Why? He wanted to clench the steering wheel so hard it cracked. But he did not scream. The rage was rumbling, internal, burning his mind. Just 2 hours ago, he'd been a happy husband, convinced his wife and children were safe at Grandma's. Now he saw her in the arms of another man, in their shared home. He could not imagine that at this very moment Lauren was in their bedroom, perhaps already kissing, snuggled in another man's arms. And all this under the roof he'd built for their life together, where they'd raised their children and lived as a family. The howl of the wind outside the ajar window blended with the frantic beating of his heart. Jack had no idea how this trip would end. There was an argument going on inside. One half of him wanted to break into the house and smash everything in his path, while the other half did not believe it was real. But he knew there was no turning back. The Ring camera footage was a warning sign that opened his eyes. Everything had already happened. He could not live in ignorance. The car sped forward, and Jack mentally prepared himself for what was going to be a difficult encounter. And the moment the flaming bonfire of friends disappeared in the rearview mirror, any illusion of family comfort faded in Jack's soul. The drive home took longer than he would have liked, about an hour. Every traffic light, every oncoming car seemed to Jack a mockery. He glanced at his phone every now and then, trying to reconnect to the Ring cam, but the connection was weak. Maybe it was the poor internet signal in the woods. Maybe it was just the camera going into standby mode. I had a wispy thought in my head. What if I get there and there's no one there? But some quiet, painful voice of inner rage said that would be even worse. Jack wanted to catch everything in place, to see for himself, to have no doubts. Every mile on the desert highway seemed like torture. The lights of the city were visible in the distance, but they seemed to be approaching at an agonizingly slow pace. During this time, Jack replayed the scene he had seen on the app so many times in his mind. The kiss on the doorstep, Lauren's smile, their departure to the bedroom. He felt his lips tighten in disgust, and a resentment as heavy as lead rise in his chest. This is not just a casual flirtation, not some smile at the bar. This is their family hearth, and she brought her lover there, confident that her husband was far away. The humiliation washed over Jack in waves like a firestorm. He hit the brakes hard on a stretch of road when a daredevil on a motorcycle flew into the oncoming lane. Jack mentally cursed him, but then realized that he was driving under the speed limit, and he'd already blinked at the signs several times. He realized he had to keep a cool head, even though it was almost impossible. The anger was overwhelming him. "I have children," he reminded himself. "If something happens to me, who will want them?" These thoughts gave him a grasp on his judgment for a moment. But the anger did not recede. It roamed inside like a wild animal in a cage. Not a single person around him would have thought Lauren capable of such an act. She had always seemed like a loyal, responsible, caring mom and wife. And now that caring had turned out to be a dirty lie. Jack pounded his fist on the steering wheel. He did not want to make a public outrage, did not want to create a scandal for the whole neighborhood. But his mind was already running through the hard scenes. How he'd kick his lover out, how he'd tear Lauren and Lauren apart. Finally, he saw a sign announcing the entrance to the neighborhood where they lived. The streets were half empty, most of the residents already in their homes. Night lantern lights illuminated familiar yards. Usually, coming home at a time like this, Jack felt a sense of peace because home to him meant comfort, a beloved wife, a warm bed. But now all those words were meaningless. The mere realization that there was a stranger in his house, that his wife had voluntarily opened the door to him, was maddening. Remembering the footage from Ring, where that man had brought wine and food into the house, Jack felt a lump rising in his throat. "They've decided to have a romantic evening at my house," he thought fiercely. His fingers turned white as he gripped the steering wheel, and for a moment he caught himself almost unblinking, fixing his gaze on the road with a look of frantic determination. Some people in a critical situation might be confused or stuporous, but Jack was of a different type. His brain in a crisis began to work clearly and straightforwardly. Deception means rupture. He'd always been a man of the all or nothing principle. And in this case, it seemed that nothing was still Lauren's best definition of her future in his life. He pushed away the shadow of memories of past happy moments. The wedding, the birth of his children, the family celebrations, all of it seemed far away now and almost irrelevant. How could everything be so denigrated? He thought bitterly, turning down a quiet street. He could already clearly distinguish familiar silhouettes of houses. Here was his house, 2-story, with a neat front lawn, which he had planted with his own hands a few years ago. The side of the house, with its dark windows, except for the light in the upstairs bedroom, seemed to scream what was going on. A stranger's car was parked at the gate, a gray Mazda he knew exactly nothing about. "So he is still here," Jack noted, catching his breath. Something inside him shivered as he imagined what was going on in that very bedroom. But his face became frighteningly calm, a menacing calm that hid a storm of feelings. He slowed down, parked a little farther away, and shut off the engine. For a few seconds he sat in complete silence, staring at that car. The people living in the neighborhood hardly noticed anything. The neighborhood was a dormitory. Everyone had long since gone to bed. And that played to Jack's advantage. No one would be in the way. In the back of his mind, he had a thought. What if? But he did not say it to himself. He was not going to compromise or make excuses for his wife. He was going to cut that vile knot of betrayal in one blow. And now all he had to do was enter the house, his territory, and do what he had to do. Silence descended on the street as he opened the car door and climbed out. The night air was colder than it had been by the lake, but that only fueled his fighting resolve. This night was going to put an end to a relationship he thought was unbreakable. In front of the house, Jack froze for a few seconds, contemplating exactly how to enter. The key was to catch them. If he started knocking on the front door, they might have time to hide, change clothes, make up a false excuse. No, he wanted to see things as they were. He glanced at the second-floor windows. There was a faint light on in the bedroom. Yes, that's where it was. He ventured around the house to get in through the back door. He knew every corner, every loophole. It was his house after all. Jack's footsteps were barely audible across the cooled lawn. He was reminded of the hunting excitement he once felt when tracking fish or, in his youth, deer during hunting seasons. Now, a similar feeling surged up, but much more somber. Jack checked the back door. It was locked, but he had the keys. He turned the key carefully, trying not to make sound. The door gave way, opening into the dark kitchen. There was semi-darkness inside, diluted only by the faint light from a hallway. Neither conversation nor footsteps could be heard. They were probably in the bedroom, he realized. As he passed the dining room table, he noticed traces of it. Flutes of wine, a half-empty bottle, a plate of cheese and fruit. It was all too romantic, as if Lauren had wanted a special evening. The sight of this evidence fueled his aggression even more. He felt his lips pressed together into a thin line on their own. He moved on. There was a carpet underfoot that muffled his footsteps. Looking up, Jack saw a man's jacket hanging on the rack next to the stairs, clearly not his. Another confirmation. Things really do happen without a shadow of a doubt. Lauren was not afraid to leave footprints, so she was sure he would not show up until Monday. Perhaps she had clear plans in her head to enjoy these days with her lover while the kids and husband were away. The thought of that made him clench his fists, but he did not want to vent his anger right now. He had saved the best and worst for the moment of truth. The night house was silent, and Jack's heart was beating so loudly that he thought they could hear it from outside the bedroom door. As he climbed the stairs, he noticed a slight opening beneath the door where the dim, warm light of the lamp was coming from. And, yes, now he heard Russell's fragments of laughter, quiet moans that stabbed at his heart. They were not even hiding, ran through his mind. No shame, no fear. Going to the door, Jack stood for a second, listening. The slight muffled sounds confirmed that there was no friendly conversation going on in there. He felt his breathing quicken. Steady, he said to himself, though inside he was seething. No tears, no lust to listen to excuses. Let us act. He pushed the handle of the door with a determined movement. It was unlocked. The door opened, and before his eyes appeared a scene which in an instant destroyed the remnants of his human patience. The room was in semi-darkness, and the curtains were slightly drawn. On the bed, Jack saw Lauren half lying on the crumpled sheets. She was wearing only a light shirt that had slipped off her shoulder, revealing much of her naked body. Next to her was Kyle, an athletic guy in his 30s. Jack remembered meeting him at the gym. Kyle was shirtless, his torso glistening in the light of the bedside lamp. He froze like a hunted animal as his husband burst in, and Lauren shrieked and yanked her shirt up sharply, trying to cover herself. Jack froze in the doorway for a moment, looking at the picture as if he were burning himself against this reality. This is it, the confirmation. No more doubts. It is exactly as I feared. A thick lump came to his throat. The betrayal appeared to him in vivid, realistic detail. Kyle was the first to come to his senses, jumping out of bed. Hey, listen, bro, that's all. He started to mumble something, grabbing at a t-shirt lying on the floor. But the look in Jack's eyes was more eloquent than any words. Lauren slumped back, as if she wanted to hide behind the pillows, her face pale and a look of mute horror on her lips. She wanted to speak or to let out tears, but she just gulped for air. Jack took a few steps toward the back of the room. His hands were clenched, but he did not scream. There was something more frightening to Lauren and Kyle in that. The full, cold determination of a man not throwing himself into an empty fight, but acting tough and deliberate. He cast a searing glance at Lauren, then turned to Kyle and gritted his teeth. I see you've decided to take a romantic vacation at my house? His voice was low, almost husky, yet frighteningly calm. Kyle, trembling, slipped his legs into the jeans he managed to find on the floor. Bro, He darted his eyes around like a hunted animal, looking for a way out of the room. I thought you were not coming back. Yeah, Jack said with an icy sneer. Well, that's a good idea. I'm not coming back. But here's the thing. I'm back. Lauren cringed, trying to say something. Jack, this is a mistake. Look, it is not what you think it is. But he held up his hand, stopping her. Shut up, he said without a trace of pity. I can see what's going on here without words. With those words, he approached Kyle, who was frantically pulling on his t-shirt. He was trying to find his shoes, but he could not seem to remember where they were. Jack grabbed him by the collar, squeezing him so tight he almost choked. Listen to me. You have exactly 10 seconds to get out of my house, or I will carry you out the window. Looking into Jack's eyes, Kyle realized that this was no idle threat. He began frantically gathering his sneakers and socks, grabbing his phone off the chair. Dude, I'm really sorry, really. He began, trying to squeeze out some pathetic apology. Shut up, Jack growled. Get downstairs before I change my mind. No sooner had Kyle reached the door than Jack gave him a kick in the ass that was enough to make him nearly lose his balance and fly into the hallway. There was a brief flash of pain in his exclamation, but Kyle did not turn around. He was racing for the stairs. Half naked, barefoot, sneakers in one hand and his phone in the other, he literally slid down, ramming his shoulder into the wall. Jack could not resist a brief glance in his wake. Out of my life, he repeated mentally, and his heart raced, though outwardly he remained cool. Turning, he looked at Lauren again. She was sitting up in bed, covered by a crumpled blanket, sobbing quietly. Her eyes were full of tears, her lips trembling. Everything around her smelled of betrayal and cheap wine. Jack, she whispered, trying to make a pathetic excuse, but she could not find the words. Jack walked slowly across the room, as if inspecting a crime scene. The sheets were wrinkled, an open bottle of wine on the nightstand, 2 glasses nearby. He felt a nauseating urge to knock it all over. But more importantly, he had to decide what to do about Lauren. Did you want a lonely night? His voice sounded muffled. Had you gotten it? Did you enjoy it? She did not try to justify herself with rational words. Only sobs and fragments of phrases came out of her mouth. Please, that is not how it is. I. But Jack was unwilling to listen. This moment was a boiling point for him. He remembered the years of their marriage, how they met, how they bought this house together, planned for children, and everything that had been sacred to him shattered like a fragile glass. He did not want to see this woman as his wife for a second longer. Walking over to the closet, he jerked open the doors and began pulling out Lauren's clothes. Her dresses, her underwear, anything he could get his hands on. On top, on the dresser, was her favorite perfume. He raked it and her makeup bag into a pile. Where is your suitcase? He muttered, addressing himself rather than her. He knew Lauren wanted to take the kids to her mother's house and probably had her bag ready. Lauren crawled out of bed with her robe on, but she realized Jack was furious. She hesitated to approach. Jack, stop, please. We can talk. He turned around, giving her a look of contempt. Talk? Talk about what? About you sleeping with your lover in my house while I'm fishing? His voice trailed off into a half-shout. Calmness was giving way to raging hatred. He tried not to snap into a yell, but the resentment was too great. You know what? I'm not one to sit around and justify cheating, he shouted. Do not even try it. Finding a suitcase by the door, he opened it quickly and the things flew out. Lauren stepped forward, holding out her hand. Jack, well, the kids. What kids? He grinned. You re the one who took them to their mom's to spend a sweet weekend here. And after that you dare talk about children? He shoved the suitcase angrily with his foot to fit more of her rags in it, then abruptly zipped it up. Lauren sobbed louder at that moment, apparently about to fall to her knees in a plea for mercy, but Jack grabbed her under the arm and pulled her away. Do not you dare touch me, he said quietly, cold determination in his voice. Pack up, get out. He picked up his suitcase and left the bedroom, heading for the stairs. Lauren called out to him, rushing after him, oblivious to the fact that her robe barely covered her body. But he did not stop. Going downstairs, Jack swung open the front door and literally threw the suitcase into the street. It landed on the walkway with a thud, and some of the clothes fell out. Out, he commanded. This is not your house anymore. Lauren froze on the doorstep, crying and mumbling, begging him to let her stay the night. Jack, do not drive me away like that. I have nowhere to. No place? He marveled at the cynicism of the situation. Maybe your Kyle has a place. Or were you planning on staying here while I fed the mosquitoes by the river? Lauren tried to touch him, but he recoiled. He felt rage boil up inside him whenever he thought about what had been going on in their bed just minutes ago. It was as if the very air in the house now reeked of treason. Without a word, he rushed back into the house, into the kitchen. There he saw the dirty glasses, the plate of dinner leftovers. Clenching his teeth, he tossed the plate into the trash can and swept the glasses into the sink in one motion. One of them shattered with a crack. "Let it go," went through his mind. Then he went back into the hallway and saw Lauren still stomping around, trying to pick up the clothes lying around, panties, blouses. She looked pathetic and confused, but he did not feel sorry for her. The anger and hurt were too great, and his respect for her had faded. "Go away." His voice sounded a final verdict. "Get out of here before I call the police for trespassing." Lauren realized the situation was catastrophic. She lowered her head, choking back tears. Her plans to spend a romantic weekend with Kyle had fallen apart, and now she was losing everything. At the sight of Jack glaring angrily at her, she felt her legs grow weak. Her clothes were a mess, her robe slipping off her shoulders, exposing her skin. But she did not care now. She just wanted a rewind time. "Jack, listen to me, please," she whispered, trying to get the conversation back on track. "I was confused. I was unhappy. I lacked emotion." But then Jack snapped. "Unhappy? So all those years of providing for my family, making repairs, raising my kids, it was not enough?" He raised his hand, clenching it into a white-knuckled fist, but stopped himself in time. He was not going to hit the woman. His rage found an outlet in words and actions, but not in a beating. He did not want to taint himself with violence. But his emotions were running high. "You wanted emotion? Then get them," he shouted, opening the door wide so that the cold of the night could penetrate the house. "Here it is, your reality." Lauren, clutching some things to her chest, stepped out onto the porch. She looked back at Jack, pleading in her eyes. "Jack, you see, not just throw me out on the street. I do not even have a car. It is my mom's." "Yes, I can," he said. "In fact, I've already done it. Go to Kyle S. house if you want. Go to your friend S. house if you want. Call your mom if you want. I do not care." She started to put on at least her underwear in tears, standing upright on the porch. Her hair disheveled, her makeup smudged. She looked like she'd been through a disaster. But it was a disaster of her own making. Trying to justify herself now would sound ridiculous. And Lauren realized she was losing her husband for good. Jack turned and walked toward the stairs leading to the second floor, suddenly remembering the sheets and bed Lauren had defiled. He was choked by the fact that all of this action was taking place on their marital bed, where they had once been happy. He stormed into the bedroom, ripping off the blanket, the pillows, throwing everything to the floor. As if in a trance, he tried to take his pain out on these things. "This ain't not stay here," his mind pounded. He piled it all up, went out onto the balcony, and dumped it in the backyard. The bedding scattered in a white cloud. Let air out the dirt, he thought cynically. He felt a little better, as if he had freed himself from some of the weight, dumping it literally into the garden. When he came downstairs, he saw that Lauren was already picking up the last of the clothes he tossed by the door. She was still standing outside, barefoot, shivering from the night's chill and nervousness. But Jack remained uncompromising. He knew perfectly well that if he shook now, if he relented and gave her a chance to stay and justify herself, he would curse himself for his weakness. "Are you still here?" he asked with cold irony, looking at her. "Where am I going to go?" She sobbed. "That is not my problem," he replied, sighing. "Look, when you decided to cheat, did you think about the consequences? You ruined your family, and there is no we anymore." With those words, he slammed the door in her face, as if putting a final stop to it. Lauren sobbed as she realized she was out on the street, in the middle of the night, in her robe and suitcase. Regret and despair piled up inside her. But there was no turning back. There was silence in the house. Jack felt his heart continue to pound in his chest. He slumped in the living room chair, staring at one point. Lauren's soft sobs could be heard outside, occasionally interrupted by short phone calls. She seemed to have called a cab or someone she knew, because after a while the headlights of a car flashed in front of the house. There was a soft noise from the engine, and everything went quiet. He got up to look out the window. Lauren had disappeared, along with her suitcase. Probably a cab, or someone she could call urgently for help. Jack gazed out into the night landscape. He had once loved this view. The quiet street lit by street lamps, the cozy neighborhood houses, lawns and trees. Now, this view seemed foreign to him. Once he had been happy to return to this house where his wife and children were waiting for him. Now he realized that things had changed irrevocably. He walked into the kitchen, looking at the mess left behind by Lauren and her lover. He remembered the brief kiss he'd seen on the tape. In our house, in our bedroom. Inside, everything clenched with revulsion, but at the same time he felt wildly tired. It was as if the whole thing had sucked the strength out of him. He brewed himself a cup of strong coffee and sat down at the table. The smoke from the cup rose to the ceiling, and he stared at nothing. One thing was clear. There was no turning back. Jack did not want any trying to start over. He did not want to listen to psychologists about working on mistakes. For him, infidelity was the point where the door closed forever. Thoughts drifted smoothly to the children. This was the most painful moment. Jack understood that they would have to explain why Mom and Dad were not living together. Yes, it would be hard, but he was sure that it was better to make an honest decision than to lie and live in illusions. Let the kids know the truth. Mom had betrayed the family. Remembering how Lauren had sobbed and tried to apologize, Jack felt the flames of resentment still burning inside him. He did not believe a word she'd said. He could feel it. She had no regret until she'd been caught in the act. In fact, she was only mourning her gotcha skin, not her broken marriage. With those thoughts, he stood up and slowly made his way upstairs. The bedroom, which still smelled of someone else's perfume, someone else's presence, made him clench his fists. He'd already thrown the sheets away, but the vile feeling would not let go. He opened the windows, letting the cool night air into the room. Leaning on the windowsill, Jack froze. It seemed he could finally exhale a little. "This is my home," he repeated mentally, "and I've scrubbed the treachery out of it." If someone from the outside seeing him now, they might think he was calm. But inside, a mixture of grief, anger, and relief at having it all cleared up was bubbling. There was no doubt now. He had made his decision, and it was final. Suddenly, he heard a thud on the door. It was Kyle, apparently trying to find his shoes or something. Jack, hearing someone fumbling at the front door, quickly went downstairs. Kyle stood on the porch a loss, trying to say something. But Jack said exactly 2 sentences. "Leave, or else you'll regret it." Kyle's face showed fear. He realized that no apology would work now. He lowered his eyes stealthily, mumbled, "Okay, sorry," and disappeared into the darkness. Jack stood on the doorstep, keeping his gaze on the back of his departing lover until he disappeared around the corner. That was it. Slamming the door shut, Jack lowered the latch. Now it was just him in the house and the heavy echo of what had happened that night. But he did not feel broken. On the contrary, a cold triumph slowly began to spill into his chest. He'd won this fight. He had not allowed himself to be humiliated, had not given Lauren and her lover any room for excuses. Like a lone lion that had chased an alien male out of his territory, he now took his place in the house proudly and calmly. He picked up his cell phone and, in a decisive move, deleted the Ring app. Then, after some thought, he installed it again. No, let it stay. I need protection, and I need to know if someone decides to show up uninvited. With a sigh of relief, he exhaled. In the bathroom, he washed his face with cold water, looked at his reflection in the mirror. There were shadows under his eyes, his hair disheveled, and he looked like a mess. But there was strength in his gaze, unbroken determination. He squeezed it out quietly. I can do this. Even if he had to rebuild his life, he would not let the betrayal stretch on for more months or years of pretense. One night of pain was better than years of lies. In the living room, Jack sank back into his chair, staring at the extinguished fire in the fireplace. The fireplace had not been stoked in a long time, but the very sight of it was a symbol of the home that was now empty. In his heart, however, he knew tomorrow would be a new day. He would talk to his children, deal with legal issues, think about divorce, and settling down. It would be hard, but he would get through it with his head held high. Turning his head, Jack saw his suitcase of gear by the door. Once he'd been excited about fishing, imagining coming home, hugging his wife and kids, sharing stories about the pike he'd caught. Now there was nothing left but the truth, which exposed his life. And that truth was harsh. Lauren had betrayed his trust and trampled on what they'd built together. But now he no longer doubted his decision. He made his point. Lauren could cry, beg for mercy, blame whoever she wanted, but from now on, she was nothing to Jack. He'd driven her away, and there was no going back. He closed his eyes for a moment, visualizing the children as faces the only thing that really mattered. He would be a good father to them, no matter what happened. He would have to explain the whole truth to them, making no secret of the fact that marriage to their mother was no longer possible. But he will let them know that he will always be there for them, no matter how fate turns out. So, in the depths of the night, amidst the silence, broken only by the occasional sound of the street, Jack felt that his faith in himself was helping him to hold on. He would be able to go on living, bearing his pain, but not compromising. And the house, it would be his fortress again, albeit without Lauren. Finally, he got up and made his way upstairs to one of the guest rooms, where there was a spare bed that had not been defiled by this sordid spectacle. He lay down, feeling the fatigue roll over him in a heavy wave. Scraps of the video he'd seen came to mind. Lauren laughing, kissing another man. Jack clenched his teeth, cutting off that memory. That was it, she was gone. And he remained in charge of his life, managing to protect his dignity and kick out the betrayal. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.